Hi, Valerie.
Hi, Ellory. How are you doing?
Doing great. How about yourself?
It's getting warm. It's not 110 degrees and 150 here.
You guys it gets up to 110 in Missouri?
That's kind of our average, but like the last couple of years, July and August both have been 95, like the whole 2 months.
Wow, that's that is crazy. Hey, real quick, I'm gonna change my headphones over, so I'm gonna unplug this real quick.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot to do that right before we got started.
Audio sounds great. Am I coming in okay?
You sound good, yeah.
Okay. So just to give you a little bit of background, for our listeners, of course, are entrepreneurs, developers, small business owners, and they're wanting to take their business to the next level. And I just try to focus on marketing, mindset, and self-care and focusing on tips.
Okay.
So I have a couple of things today that maybe we can talk a little bit. I'd like to delve in a little bit into your IT background. I know you're in sales, and
hmm
you mentioned a large company. I don't know if you want to talk about that company or you just want to leave it vague like that, or what
What
would you say?
what do you think? What's the perception about that? I haven't been gone very long. I freely talk about being laid off from IBM, but don't really talk too much about my last company. But it's on Facebook, it's on LinkedIn. What is your thought around that?
Does it help anything, is that what you want to talk about as far as giving you more credibility and authority, or is it not that important to that overall perception?
Well, if it was Dell, so I spent 4.5 years almost at Dell. Do you think that's good or bad from your perception?
I would say definitely good.
It's definitely not a bad thing to have on the resume. So like I said, it doesn't matter. I just while I was there, I didn't generally mention it, so I just never really started. But yeah, and as far as the technical piece, yeah, I was in sales. We had technical sales reps, and I was not that technical, but I can probably depend unless you're like an engineer or Cisco certified. I can probably keep up with you. So
So much started a long ago. My son's certified in Cisco too, so I can
you could
I
probably
can
talk circles around me then.
he's in that area, so yeah. Let's see what I say. And I know I looked at your website and saw looks like you have the podcast.
hmm
And I started podcast engagement in August, which I'm going to. So I'm
Awesome.
excited to be able to hear you there. And I thought maybe we could delve into that a little bit.
Yeah.
So maybe, and I saw you did business coaching as
hmm
well.
hmm
So do you ever do much mindset in your business coaching, or do you just do more marketing? This is how you can step online and set up your funnel, or tell me just a little bit about that before we get started, so I know which way to go.
Sure. Honestly, I I probably spend too much time on mindset and not enough on practical things that you can do. But to answer your question, mindset is a huge part of what I believe in and what I focus on and think where we should start from.
Perfect, perfect. So then, as I thought some of the flow will go, is I'll ask you a little bit about your background. Maybe start from where you're at now, and then we can hit some mindset, and um, how you focus that with coaching clients and why you think it's important and things like that.
Sure.
And then maybe we can transition to your podcast and maybe some of the ups and downs you had as far as starting it, growing it, etc. And then we'll
Okay.
close with a podcast. How's that sound?
That sounds great, and I have as much time as you need me for, so I have nothing right after this, in case you needed to know.
Okay.
Okay.
We have another interview at 12 o'clock Central Time, so I'll have to make sure and be ready for that.
Not a problem.
Um, so, a couple of things. Did I serve Ellory well? That's how you pronounce your name?
That's correct.
Okay. And your bio that you did, or that you sent me, thank you so much for that. And I'll record that separately and just, plug it into the beginning, so I won't actually start out with that.
No problem.
Um, and I see all your questions and all that turned off and good.
I they better be. I shut down my Outlook and closed all of make. Well, usually Facebook's the culprit, but it is closed. I think I got my computer on mute anyway. So
No problem. I'll sit here asking you, and I just want to double check that you're good. Go ahead and go ahead. Um, so there's just a couple of things that I like to do every show. Um, One is I always start off the show by asking, "Are you prepared to power up?" And I'll say, "Ellery, are you prepared to power up?" So hopefully you'll answer in the affirmative. I just like to start off the show that way and give you guys some energy starting off
so
before we carry it.
sounds good. I wish I could come up with something cool to say to answer that question.
Well, think about it. Well, how about I always like to give what I call power up gratitude, and that's where I just take a minute to shout out people in your life that have helped you get to where you're at now. So I like to think about that. And lastly, the other thing I always do is a power tip, and that'll be towards the end. So whatever you want that to be, but I always want the audience to have some powerful tip, something they can go implement in their business or life and make a difference. So they can see some tangible results from that.
Okay.
Okay? And do you have any questions for me?
Um, I don't think so.
Okay. Let me get everything ready here before we get started. Okay, now let's go ahead and get started. Today, I am simply thrilled to introduce my guest, Mr. Ellery Wells. Ellery, are you prepared to power up?
I am awesome and ready to power up. That's the best I could come up with.
Ellery. But if you could take a minute or two to tell us about you personally, where you've been and where you're at now, that would be great. Have a little bit of your background.
Cool. I have been in online business for a couple years now. I live just north of Austin, Texas. Born and raised in Texas, went to college here and everything, and worked for a long time in the IT industry, about 15 years, just doing sales from all kinds of different things from a relatively young age. And now with my online business, I've got podcasts, I do ebooks, I blog quite frequently and do coaching and try to take the experience that I've learned all along the way, the mistakes, the screw ups, the things I did well, the things I could have improved on, and just turn that into a lesson that we can all learn from and put that knowledge into blog posts, podcasts, training courses, and the people who I'm fortunate enough to coach.
Excellent. So it sounds like you have a wide and varied background to be able to pull all of that together. That's one thing I struggle with a lot is just focus on one thing, focus on the blog, I focus on the podcast, but stretch for them or difficult for them to put it all together in one system.
It can be a challenge, but I kind of adopted the philosophy of Pat Flynn when he said be everywhere. So I try to to hit the main consumption senses. I have stuff that you can watch, stuff that you can read, and stuff that you can listen to. And yeah, like you said, it can be a challenge to tie them all together into something that makes sense. And I'm doing my best, so hopefully it's working out.
Promoting it and getting the word out and letting people know and make sure that it's structured, properly.
Yeah.
So one thing we like to do here in Power Hour is do what I call the power of gratitude. So you told us a little bit about yourself. Is there anybody that you can give a shout out to that's made a big impact on you and where you're at now?
There has been, Valerie, and I'm glad that you give guests like me the opportunity to mention stuff like this because we don't always get to, and even if we have the opportunity, we don't always I don't always remember to. But I would really like to thank Ashley, my wife, for supporting me through this process. She allows me to spend hours and hours uh, either going to conferences, which luckily she goes with me most of the time, but spending hours in my home office talking to people that she doesn't know and just giving me the freedom. Plus, she helps me edit blog posts and edit my show. So first, Ashley, and then the guys in a couple of my mastermind groups. I had a book just a couple weeks ago that hit #1 bestseller on Amazon. Plus, through the process of going through my course through both of those things, those guys, I'm gonna forget some of them, like Jimmy and Donald and James and Randy and Johnny Lee. They all helped me launch my book to #1. They've helped me through the process of creating my course, and they're a big support as well. And just masterminds in general. For the listener, you better have one of those. But I think that there's way more, but those are some of the high points. So.
And I love that you and your wife work together on the project. It's good when that happens because then your spouses get a little glimpse of what's going on, and I think it helps with the support when they have a better of what's happening.
It absolutely does, and I know that not everyone has that support system in place. So you're right. It's kind. I think it's kind of rare, but it's definitely one of the best features of doing what I do.
Tell us a little bit about this #1 bestseller book on Amazon.
So my book is How to Start a Podcast for $200 or Less, and the whole reason why I started the book and wrote it in the first place is I was talking to a lot of people and they thought podcasting had to be you had to be super technical or you had to have a whole lot of money. And there's courses that are dedicated to podcasting that range from $500 to $2,000, and you can start. I mean, there's a microphone that starts at $300, and I didn't want people to not share their message with the world, Valerie, because of a high dollar amount, or they thought you had to have a mixer and know how to work it and be super technical. When I started my podcast, I'm even right now I'm on a Blue Yeti microphone, which I think I got at the time for $80. And I've upgraded a few things since then, but I started for a very low cost, and I wanted to be able to share that same incentive and just general help with the world out there. Anyone who reads my book can have nothing, start a podcast in just a couple weeks for less than $200. I again wanted to remove the technology and remove the dollar barriers for people so that they can share their message or share their guests with their audience for a low cost.
I think that's good because people have so many talents and gifts that they can share, and a lot of times people either don't have the time to sit down and write blog posts, but they can talk. And
Hmm.
you're talking like in every conversation, if you will, just about a particular topic that you are an expert in or that you're extremely passionate about. But it gives people that insight and behind the scenes. And one thing that was that I always try to remember is that most people, if you're a leader, if you feel very niche, most people are where you were 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So if you keep that in mind and know that, hey, there's always going to be people that know more than you, but if you're working in that niche every day, you're dealing with the problems, challenges, and frustrations, that more than likely you're going to know more than a large percentage of people. And just like you said with your book, you wanted to make it easy. You had already went down that path and you knew what to be done, and then you're sharing it with others. I love that.
Yeah, and as you would probably agree, Valerie, podcasting has changed my life. I mean, I've met people I never would have met, made friends I never would have made, all because of standing in, a 10 by 10 room, starting a podcast. And if I can, if I'm preventing someone from changing their life in the same way because of me not sharing what I've learned along the way, well, shame on me for not sharing the advice that I kind of stumbled through and learned. For my book's $8. For $8, you can change your life. How easy is that? So, not to keep talking about my book and what I'm doing, but that's my philosophy with just about everything that I do is you can change your life. You can make a difference in your financial situation, the friends that you have, the level of success that you're having, and it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg. And if I can show you how to do it for less than $200, I want to. So that's my motivation there, and that's why I wrote it. Exactly.
Sometimes that's the hardest part. And maybe that's a good segue mindset. I know you have your coaching program a lot of clients as far as their businesses, and the whole mindset is a big part of that. So I'd love to hear from you, kind of how you dealt with mindset with your clients and why you that
That's a good question. That's a good summary too, because mindset. I play golf, and golf more than most sports that I've played, mindset plays a big part. You have to focus on the task. If you're distracted, whatever, you're going to swing bad, and I swing bad anyway, so it's just just making things worse. But the same thing applies to business. You have to be thinking the right way and focused on the right things, or you're going to be going off in tangents, or you're going to be more susceptible to the ADD that we all seem to have. But what I have discovered over this last couple of years of becoming a business owner, becoming this entrepreneur, is there's a difference in mindset between being a producer and being a consumer. When you start an online business where you work for yourself, when your livelihood depends 100% on what you can do and what you can bring in, you see the world differently as opposed to seeing things just as you would buy them. In fact, it's funny. I went to a church service just a couple weekends ago, and I started looking. We sat behind all of the technology that makes the lights and the sound go for the church, and I started looking at the mixer and the software that they were using to put up the slides for the songs and how they were connecting microphones and all these things. And I was trying to I should have been paying attention, but I was looking at how this big production was going on and how I could apply it to my business. And that's just one piece of the mindset. When you go from just buying books to creating books, or listening to podcasts to creating podcasts, or the same thing goes with videos, you start looking at things a little bit differently. You start seeing a situation not as, wow, this is great, or man, this really sucks, but what can I learn from this and turn around and share with my audience? Or,
I was just going to jump in right
yeah, go
there.
ahead.
How
Sometimes, probably not as much as I should. I just from the experience that I've had in going through corporate America, I do look at things through the lens of how can I make this simpler, and That's something I apply to my business. And when I started, I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money on things. And you, as you know, when you're starting an online business like we have, you can spend a whole bunch of money. But if you can make it simple, excuse me, if you can look at a process and streamline that for yourself, or find a lower cost way to do that, you will be. I think you're going to be more successful, and your business is going to be much more self-sustaining than if you just poured thousands of dollars into it just to get it off the ground in the first place.
right. I think that's a big part of where comes in. It's like you said, the I every month it has and the shiny object syndrome and they believe in it. I mean, this one might make my business take off like a rocket. Oh, here's something else. Stuff from things and never see if one thing through. So, and
Yeah.
yeah, I know it's never a lot. It they they're in learning mode, which means and it's getting, but they have the hardest time switching from that learning mode to doing something. They just want 5 courses, 10 webinars, and
Hmm.
do completely in learning mode and think that they are actively solving the business. That's only a part of it. They need to actually optimize that something. My heart goes out to a lot of people that get stuck in that mode. Do you have any advice for those people?
Uh, yeah, I can come up with. Let me think about that for a second. But yeah, you're exactly right, Valerie. I did that for a long time too. I've read all the top books, and yes, those are some of the things that we should all be doing. We most likely need to increase our skills or increase our knowledge or possibly even change our mindset to get where we want to go, because the way we think now has gotten us to exactly where we are. But you are absolutely right in that you can get stuck in this loop of book after book after book after book, or course after course, webinar after webinar, and you're just spinning your wheels in mud and you're not getting any traction and you're not going anywhere. I think the easiest way to implement action, I guess anything that I would say just comes down to action. Just find one specific thing that you can do. One of my good friends talks about taking massive action. And while that's great and that's good to say, nobody actually takes massive action. They take small actions on a daily basis to get anywhere. And whether it's putting down the book and making one new connection on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter, something like that, or making one additional phone call, or sending one email, or interviewing one person, every massive action is, if you look closer, is really just made up of dozens or hundreds of smaller actions. And whatever it is that well, I'll talk to the listener for a second. Whatever you want to do as a listener of the Empower Hour podcast, find one thing that you can do. Envision this perfect scenario. Or let me rephrase. Let's imagine that you wanted to have 1,000 followers on Twitter. How do you get that? You don't just suddenly do that. You connect with one person, and then you connect with another person, and then you connect with another one, all the way until you reach your goal. You have to break down your goals in whatever you want to accomplish, your end goal. You have to break that down into small, tiny steps. And sometimes that is very difficult to do. But Valerie, you might be in a similar position to me, but going through the process of breaking it down from the whole into these smaller chunks, you gain more clarity on what the goal is is anyway. Plus, you kind of develop a map or an outline and get new ideas and filter out the bad ones just by going through the process of figuring out what those first two or three steps are. Uh huh.
Because
Yep.
you go, in different directions and go to, I almost want to say, a bank or a bumper that causes you to to come back to where you're at. And I think that's the thing, people are scared too. I love how you said small, manageable steps, and I think the thing there, not only small, manageable steps, but consistency. Consistently do stuff
Yep.
that one will follow it every day. Consistently do stuff that, whatever you do, just make it a part of your schedule calendar. For 15 minutes every day, I'm going to follow as many Twitter people as, influencers as I can in my day. Then bang it out, and after a month, not imagine how much better you feel.
Yeah, exactly. What you said is, we don't always see the challenges and the obstacles. I try to compare it. I don't try. I do compare it to playing a 18 round hole of golf. The golf course is our life, and when we're in this kind of pre-launch phase, when we're still doing the research and doing the preparation before we start taking action, it's like we're planning for the fourth or fifth hole, how we're going to make our chip shot when we haven't even teed off the first hole yet. There's going to be obstacles that we will encounter through life, through business, or even on this golf course. There's going to be obstacles we can't even see them from where we are, but we think, man, if I just read enough, if I just plan enough and prepare enough, I'll be able to handle that when I get there. But man, we haven't even teed off yet. We can't even see the pin on the first hole yet, and we're getting stuck on what's going to happen on hole four. And that's that. I fell into that trap for a while, and I think a lot of people, and probably the listeners to your show as well, Val. Hopefully not all of them or not many of them, but if they're like me, they think that they can plan it all, and that's just not possible.
That's not a logical idea. That's not for, I think, I want everything detail and have full control over it all. And I run, but I fall down sometimes and lose confidence. Yeah, I that. It just moves quickly, and if you spend all your time planning, then the opportunity's already gone by the time you're preparing for it.
Oh yeah, that's definitely true too. Yeah, you can definitely try to prepare your way through, and you've missed the boat. That's happened to me before.
Exactly. Um, so as far just to wrap up with mindset, as far as mindset, is there one or two tips that you can share as far as people, Ellery, that maybe they'll use on a daily basis or as they're talking to their own clients or maybe even as they're marketing, how do they get into the heads of their target audience? Any of those tips.
I wish I could talk about the marketing one, but I'm terrible at marketing. But
Let me help you with that.
yeah, yeah, it's just not one of my strong suits. When it comes something to do to change your mindset, I, I don't know necessarily something off the top of my head. I should be able to just rattle a few things off and share this wonderful wisdom that I've acquired over the last couple of years. But if I had to guess, and I don't want to say to start a podcast because that sounds very cliche, but the advantages of that are the same advantages that you could apply to the corporate atmosphere, which also made me fairly successful there. But it's just making a connection with somebody, Valerie. It's reaching out and a reaching cross the out, whatever the corny phrase there is, but it's making a connection with someone who is doing what you want to be doing, has the position that you would like to have someday, or is just maybe a few steps further down the path than you are, and just buying them a cup of coffee, buying them well, the coffee on a daily basis would be much cheaper than some lunch, but just going and sitting in a cafeteria or going and sitting in a coffee shop or having a Skype call or something like that just for a few minutes and just see what they're going through and just really learn how they think, because how they think now is just a reflection of how they've had to change their thoughts over the last few months or few years. That's probably the best advice that I could give, is just learn from the people who are doing what you want to be doing down the road.
Stay and been where you are at now, and there how it's working and what they're doing, and then you can model after, not to say copy them, but it's model their strategy, their the way they people, those types of things. I think what you're really driving at there is yeah, and build those connections and build those relationships.
Yeah, you're right, and I would not advocate copying, but too many people think, excuse me, too many people think that they have to reinvent the wheel to be successful when all they really have to do is, again, not copy, but emulate the method and the process of what the successful people are doing, and you'll get there much further than you would had you not done that.
Much better, much better. Let's let's talk about your podcast for a little bit, and maybe some things behind starting it, and if you could share with us the trials and tribulations of launch starting your podcast and where you're at now.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I was just talking to someone yesterday about this. They said, "Why did you start a podcast?" And my goofy answer was, I thought I could get rich off of it. It was during the swell of Entrepreneur on Fire. I mean, John hasn't slowed down, but yeah, just was it $214,000? I think I saw him in. Yeah, so he's definitely not slowing down, but I saw the success that John was having, and I thought I could replicate it. Long story short, I have not even close, but that was in part why I started a podcast. I knew it could change my life. I thought it would be closer to being more tied to money than it actually has been. But I if if I knew now, well, or if I knew then what I know now, my answer to this question would be different today. That's a weird time loop there, but again, it goes back to having content and providing value that people can read, watch, and listen. And so I've had great podcasts and I've had comments, man, I wish that was something that I could read. I can't watch or I can't listen to the podcast. And it's that kind of flexibility with adding a podcast to your brand is incredible. It reaches a new subset of your audience. But to have someone read a 4 or 5 minute blog post is sometimes a challenge, but it's less of a challenge for someone to listen to a 45-minute podcast, which is really weird. But I guess it just depends on what you're doing at that time. So again, had I known then what I know now, my answer would be I knew I wanted to have another avenue for me to add value to my audience. But I started it because I saw the potential of the platform as a whole as it was growing. I think there was a surge of podcast popularity. I don't know, 2006 or 2007. It kind of lulled, and now it's coming back. But it's an on-demand form of media. People can go in and listen, as you know, at any time. And being able to provide that to my audience has been powerful. Being able to connect with people like you. I mean, you said you're in Missouri, I'm in Texas. We're, I don't know, a few hundred miles away, but we're making a connection. And we wouldn't have been able to do this necessarily over a blog post. And those connections and those types of things are really incredible. And the final thing that I'll mention is I got thrown into podcasting, and I had the idea, I had a goal to start one, or I had talked about it, but it wasn't until my wife bought for my birthday. She bought me this microphone that I'm on right now. It was her spending our money on something for me to to do a part of my business with. It was no longer theory. It was no longer, hey, I'd like to start a podcast one day. It as soon as I unwrapped it, opened the box, it became, this is $80 I just spent on you to do this, and it became real. It was something I could touch, something I could hold and feel, and at that point, I had to figure it out. I mean, I could always return it, but it was her buying me the object that I use every time I do a podcast that really threw me into, I don't want to say the deep end because it doesn't have to be that deep, but it was her purchase that really pushed me to action. Yeah, absolutely. I at least I do every time I'm asked that question. I don't think about it every time, but it's never far from my thoughts. Just if that had never happened, I mean, I don't know what I would be doing today. So not well. I wanted to say because I don't have to write, but I really enjoy writing, so that wouldn't really work. My favorite part about podcasting, just having a fun chat with people like you and the other podcasts, people I have on my show and the people who have me on their show, just having a fun conversation. I mean, it's they're rarely boring, so they're kind of fun. It it is, and it's an interesting thing that you mentioned. I'm not a big phone person either. I mean, it's kind of a distraction. If I'm on the phone, I could be reading or watching TV or playing a video game, but I really enjoy and get into doing the podcasting bit. And you're right, we do get to know people. I had Chris Cerrone of the Cerrone Show on my podcast. It hasn't aired yet, but we talked for like an hour and a half on the show, and then a month later or something, he flew into Austin, called me up, and we had dinner like we had known each other for a decade. And we you do establish these connections through podcasting. I think maybe, Valerie, what could contribute to that is if you're on the phone, you could be, in your car driving to work or over to your cousin's house or whatever. You could be doing something else, uh, but there's nothing going on in my office right now. There's no, I mean, my phone's on, but it's on vibrate. I'm not looking at text messages. I'm not checking emails. There's no music. I mean, my fan's not even on, which is why I'm a little bit warm at the moment. But all I'm doing is focusing on what you're saying and how I should respond to your answers. And you don't get that when you're on the phone with somebody. And noise canceling headphones help. Yeah. Absolutely. I am on a panel with Chris Rohn is one of them, James Kenson, the cash car convert, a guy by the name of Vern Ross, and I think there's one more that I'm probably forgetting, and the hilarious Christina Cantors. She's from Australia, and she's got a real crazy act. She's hilarious, and she's hosting this panel, and we're going to talk about getting guests on our shows. Some of my big famous guests that I've had are Pat Flynn. I have had Amy Porterfield, Cliff Ravenscraft. Those are some of the big names. I've had a guy who has made, I think he's written 12 books. 6 of them have been made into movies, and he's a multi millionaire CEO in Oklahoma City. I've had people who have just come out of the pits of depression and become better on the other side. And between the handful of us that are going to be on this panel, we've had some of incredible guests with incredible stories, and we're going to be talking about how we did that. And I'm sure it'll go off on a tangent, just like most podcasts eventually do. But I'm sure it'll go off on some sort of tangent about other aspects of podcasting. And I don't have the date and time in front of me, Valerie, but if you go to podcastmovement.com, I think the full schedule is up, but the on the speakers page, I'm all the way down at the bottom because of my last name being Wells. But if you can't find it anywhere else, you can go to my page and see my panel and get the times. And I forgot what ballroom we're in, but I would love to meet you and anyone listening to this. Come out and say hello. Even if you don't have a podcast yet, come and say hello. I think you hit it twice, Valerie.
Ellory Wells.com is that where they can go to find out if podcast.
I like as far as the event details, or
Yeah, you would have the
oh, I meant the podcast movement speaker page, but I have one too. But if anybody wants to hop on my email list, that's where I social media just moves too fast and too sporadic, whatever. But I'll be emailing my list all of the details. But podcastmovement.com/speakers maybe would have the full list, and I think there's the keynotes at the top, and then there's probably 40 or 50 panelists doing different things for different tracks. So I think it's podcastmovement.com/speakers. Whatever that Saturday and Sunday is, it's like all day Saturday and pretty much all day Sunday, like 8 to 5 Sunday or something.
Well, I'm excited that I'm going.
Yeah,
I have the hotel, and now I can meet you. I've already interviewed you, so that is awesome.
yeah.
Um, those are some big things you had on your show. Is there anything that you can share with my audience pre-panel for each guest, or do you keep that for the podcast?
No, I can share. They haven't issued me a gag order yet, so I can share as much as I want. I think my tip: don't focus on the big name people. I've had people who most people haven't heard of. They share the podcast 10 times more than the big people do. So one enormous, huge guest, your dream guest. If you're working on your podcast and you have a dream guest, having them on your show will not change your life. Wah wah. It doesn't. There, it's the small people who have incredible stories that no one's heard before that we really relate to. It's but to get those guests, be be genuine, spark their interest, tell them how you can add value, or that you know something about their story and how it could add value to your audience. And your first email out of the gate, don't send a link. I've made that mistake before. It not only will it technically be more likely to get flagged as spam by your mail provider, but it's not as personal. If you said, "Hey, would you like to be on my show? I heard you on so and so show, or I heard that you went through this life event, and I think that's incredible, and I would love to share your story with my audience. If you are interested, email me back. I would love to talk to you." Send that, and I guarantee you will get 10 times more responses than, "Hey, here's my podcast. If you'd love to be a guest, click this link, and I'd love to talk to you."
I think that's so right because it it doesn't persist before you really said hello, how are you?
Yeah, when I use a template too, Valerie. I share that as one of the bonuses in my book, but it's the same one that I send pretty much everybody when I invite them, unless I have to go through Twitter or Facebook because I can't find an email. But it says essentially where I found them, and I ask, if I don't remember now, it's the same one. I I sound real gray right now. That's why I don't remember it. Yeah. But there's the only. I'm trying to think. I think the only link that's in those emails might be in my signature, and it takes you back to my homepage. I think it's. I don't think I have one at all in the body of the email. The only thing that I do to point them in the direction, and I'm trying to be secretive or uh, dishonest or whatever the term would be. But I do tell them the name of my show. Now, some people will say, yeah, give them social proof up front, say all the big names that have been on your show. I say, hey, I host the Empowered podcast, and it's real easy to find online. I mean, I'm the only Ellory Wells in the world, I'm pretty sure. So anybody that took a half a second to look would find me and my site, and they'd find my podcast, and they could look to see 42 episodes of incredible people. But I don't throw it in their face either. So I don't do the social proof. Some people might suggest that, but I don't.
That at least and ask, because I know my audience will be wondering too. You said focus on the lesser known people because they share it out more, they're more willing to share it, and I found that as well.
Hmm.
But still, getting those big names on does something for your show and your credibility and such. So
Yeah.
how do you approach those people? I mean, do you approach them? Do you try to connect with other people or look in your connections of who might know them for an introduction? Or can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. The same way. I approach them the exact same way because they're people too. I sent Pat Flynn the same email. I actually caught Cliff and Amy after they had gotten off stage at the platform conference that Michael Hyatt puts on. So I kind of ambushed them, but they were very nice and they said yes when they did not have to. So I can't completely say it was just luck of the draw there, but I approached them and best-selling authors and Emmy Award winners the same way that I do anybody else. I send them pretty much the same email. I use a template, but again, I change the details and customize it for every single person. It's not just a blast email, but you're right. Having those big names does lend some credibility, and it can help you. It can help your podcast become real to you as the host when you're starting out. Like if you just interviewed your family and friends, you'd be like, "Oh, this is kind of cool," but yeah. But if you had a big name person, you're like, "Man, I'm a podcaster now," and it just changes your mindset. That being said, I have had one pretty big name person, she canceled on me, and another person I hadn't actually. I've had two really big name people. One guy said he can't, and the other one said not right now. I want to see what you come up with because I hadn't launched yet. I just never approached him, but I haven't circled back with those people because I know that they're probably not going to be my most popular downloads anyway. I know that now. I can say that after 40 hours of content that I've produced, but um, John Dumas, when he canceled me, he was working on Podcaster's Paradise, and having him back on my show, I'd love to, but I'm not pursuing it anymore. I know it's not going to change my life. Somebody else, when she canceled, she had a book that was just coming out, and I know having her on the show will not just take me all the way to number one. It's not going to just change my life for the better. So do what you need to do to feel professional. Get those people helping you start in those podcasts. And you're right, Valerie. It does add some credibility. Like if Pat can put up with Ellory for an hour, maybe I can too. Uh, but those big name people, it's not just going to be a light switch where you see this overnight success because you've had one person on your show. If you had 50 great people that were normal people like me, I'm just an average dude. If you had me on your show and we talked about all the crap that I've trudged through over the last couple of years, there's going to be more people that relate to me and my story than can relate to John Dumas, who makes $215,000 a month. Uh
No,
oh.
no. I just sat down and talked about person that the artist got off stage at a conference, and
Hmm.
his exact point is that people couldn't get behind their speakers and say great things all the time. And he speaking at that conference, and of course you're speaking at a conference. So I just want to put that out there that you are actively engaging with people both offline at conference and online through podcasts like now, and
Hmm.
now even the email thing. But I think that is a huge difference between people that find success and people that don't. Do you have any input on that?
Yeah, it's got to be both. And in fact, I would love to do more in person, like live across the table type interviews with people, just because it's some connections are great online. I think tomorrow I'm talking to a guy in the UK and one in Australia, and it's not possible to sit across from the table at Starbucks, but there is something powerful about being 3 feet away from somebody and you can see their expressions, how they react to what you say. Just an in-person handshake or a hug connection, that it's not better or worse, but it's just different than what you would get from an email or Skype 1,000, 2,000 miles away. So you have to be flexible to do both, even if it is out of your comfort zone, to go up to someone and say, "Hey, I heard you on Valerie's show," and shake their hand.
Absolutely. Because it makes that connection deeper. And then I think, it also exposes more people, just like you said, you have that opportunity to go up to people directly. And she sees herself getting secluded online, or as far as you with her directly.
Yes, she does.
Yeah. So, that's one of the things is that, when you go to these conferences, like the podcast, obviously there's all podcasting there. I was excited about it because of that fact. How many people that I will be able to meet and have the opportunity to meet that I wouldn't have necessarily had otherwise.
One thing that I would, and I just now thought about this. Don't be the guy that carries your recorder around, just like holding it out. Like I've seen those people. I tried very hard not to be. I didn't attend all of the platform, but I went to the. This is kind of the nerd and sad part of my life back in November, but I didn't attend platform. It was like $1,000, but I went and I hung out outside. I knew people that were going. It's not like I just drove and just stood outside waiting. But I took work to do, and I knew I wanted to have lunch and meet the friends that I went to see, but I also got to meet some of these really big name people. But I've seen those people that just hover around with the microphone, and they're just like, "Well, you want to do an interview? Do you want to do an interview? Do you want to do an?" Just don't be that dude. Just say, "Hey, I'd love to interview sometime. Can I email you?" And most people will say yes. Just make sure you actually follow up with the email.
Right. Follow up. Don't be that paparazzi.
Yeah, sorry for my rant there for a second, but I got that idea. It's like,
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. I never cared for that style before, and I'm finding now, especially my podcast getting out there and my name getting out there more, I have people contacting me in various ways, much more aware of the other side of how you like to be approached, or how it makes you feel from the other side. So thanks for bringing that up.
yeah, we all like to feel special, but we don't want to be bugged. And I'm saying that like I'm this big, huge celebrity, and I'm not. But um, I've just seen it done well, and I've seen it done poorly. So
Exactly. Um, so I really enjoyed our conversation today. One thing that I always like to ask guests is what I call a power tip, because I want to give the listeners that power tip that one to give us today, Ellory?
My power tip would probably be break wherever you can see yourself in the next year, whatever you would like to have, whatever you would like to own or have had accomplished, or the number or quality of connections that you would like to have in 12 months from now. Do something as soon as this podcast is done, probably in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Do one thing, connect with one person, send one email, do one activity, whatever it is that will get you there. Because again, we're not going to do these massive actions. We're not going to arrive 12 months from now and have it all accomplished. It's going to be done through a process of one connection or one email or one activity. So whatever it is, when this podcast is done, have that one thing that you can do in mind, and then do it.
Well, Ellery, thank you so much for taking the time, share your expertise and experience, and I really enjoyed talking with you. Now, tell us again how listeners can connect with you and follow up with you.
Sure, absolutely. My website is ellorywells.com, ELLORYWELLS.com. And I'm also at Twitter /ElloryWells and Facebook.com/ElloryWells. And I'd love to connect with you. Come say hi. Come tell me where you heard me rambling on for an hour. And let's start making those connections today.
Awesome. Thank you so much and have a great day.
You're welcome, Valerie. I love to be in here. Thank you.
Still there?
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Hopefully that works out for you and adds value to your audience.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, and what I want to my audience on is that I'm not really marketing mindset, and there's something that sort of marketing mindset stuff there, for I think it all leads into the whole entrepreneurial experience. And I think, a lot of times people like to hear the story and, how you got to it, all these little tidbits or the
Hmm.
behind the scenes that isn't necessarily there. There's places or, on a blog post or whatever. So I think they could definitely enjoy it. And hopefully some of the listeners come to visit the podcast as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Do you know when this will air? I have no timeline, but just out of curiosity.
Um, I Not exactly. It's probably going to be like the, I think the 31st of July
Okay.
is probably where it's going to. Definitely before, I'm just looking for a calendar now. So, because I air on Monday and Thursday, so I'm thinking the latest, definitely by the 7th of August. Because I know out there, we're talking about podcasts.
Oh yeah, that'd be good too. That's one thing that I would have overlooked, but that's a good point.
Um, so I really am looking forward to the 31st.
Cool.
But when I have that date nailed down, then because why I'm saying I don't have a firm date is because the other podcasts that I have already had recorded, I'm trying to launch those right before their particular
Mm,
business launches. So I'm trying to work that all into my calendar good. And but as soon as I know for sure, I will send it out to you. And then of course before it actually goes live, I'll send you a reminder. So hopefully you can share that out with your group.
absolutely. Yeah, very cool.
Okay. All right. Any questions before we let you go?
I don't think so. I'm good.
Well, thank you so much. Um, I love about hi, I saw you and I yes. Those are
Good.
awesome. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And again, thank you for allowing me to be on your show.
All right. Take care.
You too. Thanks, Valerie.